Hello and welcome back to Polyphonic Tarot. This next reading I'm going to do is a Celtic Cross for a querent who would like to get some career advice, and more specifically, well, in your email you said that you were feeling possibly that you were being called to a more spiritual pursuit, and so you were more specifically looking for advice in that area. What the next step is for you. So, what we're going to do is a Celtic Cross as you requested, and I've pulled your significator, which is, as you are a Cancer, I'm using the Knight of Cups today. And I believe what I'm going to do for this reading is I actually, I go back and forth on this all the time, and it's really just a technicality more than anything. But as you guys know, I usually lay the cards starting from the top, and then I go in the cross. But I want to start trying to get in the habit of doing it in the clockwise circle fashion, because I kind of like the semi-sense of continuity that creates. That sort of makes sense. So anywho, without further ado, I will be doing a Celtic Cross like that. Start going around instead of starting from the top, and we are asking specifically for advice about your spiritual pursuits, and I suppose if your career and whether or not these two things intersect. I invoke thee, that thou wilt send hither the great angel who art set over the operations of this secret wisdom, that he may lay his hands invisibly upon these consecrated cards of art, and that thereby we may obtain true knowledge of hidden things to the glory of thine ineffable name. Amen. I love these cards. I love the size. I love them very much, but I'll tell you, shuffling them is not always easy. And that is certainly a bit of a con, as opposed to a pro. I do wish that they were a little bit easier to shuffle, though nothing is as bad. Well, I don't want to get too distracted here. It's just another deck within reach that I'm looking at that I never use because it's impossibly large. So, anywho. Okay. Alright, first card, overall situation, is the Three of Discs crossed by the Chariot. Alright, this is good. Grounding is the Six of Swords. In the past is the Moon. And crowning you is Strife. That's interesting. In the immediate future, you have the Queen of Wands. perspective is the Nine of Wands. Environment, Princess of Cups. Hopes and fears, the Hermit. And the overall outcome is the Six of Cups. Okay. Well, this is good. I'm going to put it over here so that I can fit it all in one frame. And then bottom of the deck is the Queen of Cups. And there's some other stuff beneath there that we may get at if necessary. But main thing, Queen of Cups on the bottom of the deck. Okay. Well, I think the overall idea that is immediately expressed here is the idea that after having worked really hard for a long time at really, at introspection, I think that you've done a lot of personal work and a lot of personal growth that has been very successful for you, and I think that it's allowed you to overcome some personal obstacles that have been in place for you. The Chariot is a really wonderful card, I think, to have in this kind of situation, in this kind of reading. Of course, the Chariot is the card of the new Aeon, according to Crowley. But the Chariot represents this wonderful overcoming of suffering or pain. It's the insistence on the indestructibility of life itself and of the individual, really, the indestructibility of one's origin, really, the fact that because one comes of divine origin, then therefore one is indestructible and nothing bad can really ultimately happen to them, to a person, to anyone. And that's sort of the overall idea. Oh, sorry, I thought my phone maybe was going off. That's kind of the overall idea of that card, but in this case, it's paired with this Nine of Wands in your perspective. So you feel like you've worked very hard at this. And if you watched the previous reading I talked about how this card was very different from the Seven of Discs, or was similar, sort of, to the Seven of Discs that was in the previous reading. You know, the Seven of Discs is about toil and labor and being tired, but the Nine of Wands is about being tired, but there's more drive behind it. There's more of a connectedness to a sense of purpose, and by having that purpose, you have more motivation to actually carry through and finish whatever it is that you are trying to get through. So with the moon in your past, I see that there definitely have been some dark things that you have dealt with, and I see that at the moment you feel like you have finally made some really important progress with those areas of your life. And I would say that they are predominantly psychological. And the reason for this is because of this Six of Swords in the root of your situation. So the Six of Swords for me always speaks of rationality and logic and human cognition. And just the human thinking process is really what the Six of Swords represents to me. It is the Lord of Science, and it is Mercury in Aquarius, so it has this connotation of logic and wisdom and figuring things out and having very balanced, organized thinking. And that is very different from the energy in the moon, which is much more emotional and much more almost chaotic. It seems much more dangerous and dark and scary and mysterious, whereas the Six of Swords has it figured out. And especially in conjunction with the Chariot in your sort of supporting detail card, because in this case I don't think the Chariot represents an obstacle so much as it represents the fact that you have been very successful and have had some triumph in overcoming whatever baggage the moon represents for you. And I believe it's something that you've carried probably for a long time, and something that you've really been working on for a long time. And again, it's sort of like you're just starting to make headway with it. And so perhaps this is why you feel like maybe you are being called to do something more spiritual, because you have managed to have some spiritual success yourself. Now, now where this is going from here, I like the little string of fire that you have going diagonally this way. From the Nine of Wands into the Queen of Wands in your immediate future, and the Five of Wands in your possible outcome or your more desirable outcome. And in this case, I think the Queen of Wands is the next person to sort of inspire you or affect your course. I would say, I don't know if there is a specific person in your life whom you turn to for spiritual advice, but the Queen of Wands is someone who would be very positive and really have a very optimistic outlook on things, and also have she has a very strong presence. She has a very almost sexual presence. She's very magnetic. And of course, I've talked in my videos about the Queen of Wands before being representative of my own HGA. And so, you know, it could be representative of your HGA as well, being influential here. But it could also just represent someone who has a very strong influence in your life, particularly spiritually, and someone who's just very supportive of you and very warm, very loving and very open, very frank, very honest person, but a very genuine person as well. You know, they don't usually have much to hide. And the interesting thing, too, is that this Queen of Wands figure is opposite to the Queen of Cups figure that is on the bottom of your deck. And I almost sense that the Queen of Cups and the Queen of Wands are here supposed to be foils for each other, and that the Queen of Cups really resonates with you and what you have been going through, and I think it's most indicative of how you have been quietly going about your own work, and in regards to your own self-development, which is certainly a major goal of yours. If we look at the Hermit that you have in your reading, your Hermit is in your hopes and fears. So you're looking for opportunities to grow and develop spiritually. And it's something that you, for the most part, largely want to do yourself. And it's not necessarily something that you are looking to necessarily have someone figure out for you or even necessarily help you with. The Hermit is all about doing things by yourself and just taking one's own initiative and really following through with it. And isolating oneself and just doing whatever you think, whatever you know internally to be the right course for you. And it's not necessarily the right course for anyone else, but if it works for you, then that's what you should be doing. But what I think is interesting about just getting back to the Queen of Wands, is that it's almost like the Queen of Wands, as the next phase of this situation, represents you opening up a little bit more and being less private about your experiences spiritually and as far as your own development is concerned. The Queen of Wands... I don't know that it really represents another person having much of an influence on you. And by all means, you can write to me and say that there is a specific person that this makes sense for. The typical physical characteristics, by the way, of the Queen of Wands, in case those ring a bell, are usually a woman of middle-aged or sometimes a little bit younger. Basically anyone over the age of 30 or so, who's a woman, generally speaking, who's blonde with. Is she blonde? I thought the Queen of Wands was blonde. Well, I'm going to have to scrap that because I actually don't remember the physical characteristics of the Queen of Wands, which is terrible. But I never really read with physical characteristics all that much anyway, so I suppose it doesn't really matter. But what I was reading, and it's entirely true. The Queen of Wands, as I was saying before, has just such a magnetic presence, and she's so different from the Queen of Cups in that the Queen of Cups. The Queen of Cups is so much more passive, and she's very thoughtful, she's very quiet, but she doesn't reveal a whole lot. She's for the most part just very intuitive and empathetic, and she just kind of reflects back whatever the observer wants to see in her. Whereas the Queen of Wands is her own self no matter what, and that power of magnetism that she has is very strong, and people are naturally attracted to her. So it may be that the Queen of Wands is suggesting that that the next step for you naturally is to just be more open about this, and the people who are going to influence you the right way will be drawn to you naturally. I think that's more important than any physical characteristics of a potential person that I could rattle off at you. And the other thing, too, that I think is interesting about the Queen of Wands is that she is connected to the Five of Wands, which is a possible outcome, or the Crown card is just, the Crown is interpreted as usually the best possible outcome. Some cards come up and they're not really easy to interpret as best possible outcomes, but I think in this case, considering the reading is about spirituality and spiritual pursuits, I think the Five of Wands is a very significant card for that, because the Five of Wands is indicative in certain situations of that kind of antagonization that can occur when someone acts out their own will as motivated by their spirit guides, or whatever, their guardian angel, whatever you want to call it. This is the card of all the prophets who ticked off all the ancient Hebrews. Basically, it's the card of, to use an allegory, or to use the old biblical allegories, it's like the prophets going to certain cities and telling the people to repent, otherwise their town will be destroyed, and it either pisses them off or they do something about it, and they actually repent. And that's what this card is sort of about. It's about coming up against other people because you disagree, and butting heads and competing with each other. And it's all about difference of opinion, really, and difference of willpower, difference of pursuit. And since spiritual paths are so unique and set one on a path of real self-activation in the world, and not really any hiding of oneself. It's a very blatant way of expressing oneself, and sometimes it rubs people the wrong way. And I do think that is an aspect here, that as you open up more about this, it is possible that you will invite some of this energy into your life. But I think it's important for you to remember that you are largely immune to it, or you should be immune to it. With this Chariot business here, I think the Chariot says you have the wherewithal to be able to withstand whatever opposition may come as a result of you becoming more spiritual, or being more open about your spirituality, or trying to share that with other people. There is a chance that can create opposition in your life, but to remember that ultimately none of those things can ever really deter you or destroy you or hurt you in any way. It's important to remember your invulnerability to those things, especially when one is being led by the right channels. Of course, there's that great piece of scripture, if God be for us, then who can be against us? And I think that is fairly relevant here for you. Now, the overall outcome card is also really good. You have the Six of Cups for your overall outcome. So I think whatever happens, you're going to pursue what you're meant to pursue, in that it's going to fulfill you, it's going to feel like it's the right thing for you to do, and you're going to take the path of greatest happiness for yourself. Very pure happiness, as we talked about in the previous reading, if you watched it. The Six of Cups is all about pure happiness and very unadulterated happiness. It's just very easy and free-flowing, and it comes from a place of rightness, of harmony, of things being aligned correctly, and there's nothing forced about it or overdone. It's very simple and sometimes sexual, but it's usually the card, for me, it's the card that represents the joy that comes from pursuing one's life purpose, from one's true will, from enacting that. And it's that sense of very clean and very pure joy and happiness that can come from that. And so that's the path you are ultimately taking in this situation with that Six of Cups. Yeah, that's about it with that. You don't have any other solar cards, actually. I'm trying to see if there's any connection between that Six of Cups and anything. And really, the Hermit is semi-solar because he's holding the sun. Of course, Strength has the sun on it, and it is connecting. It is representing the connection between Tiferet and Yesod on the Tree of Life, but I don't know if that's all that relevant here. Mars. There's a little bit of Mars here, which is perhaps worth noting. And it's primarily in this central section here. Of course, Mars is the planet of aggression and lots of energy. I think that just goes hand in hand with what we were saying about the transition from the Queen of Cups to the Queen of Wands. I just think that the next step is for you to be for you to be a little bit more open about this and allow the influences that are necessary for you to come into your life naturally. I think I don't know that there's anything you necessarily need to do per se, and I don't know that it's saying that spirituality or that you're being called to change your career path to anything particularly spiritual. But I think it's also encouraging of your spiritual development. I think it's saying that the work that you've done so far has been really good for you, and that it's a good thing for you to keep going with it because it can only bring you further happiness. It may bring some difficulty, through other people, but for the most part, just ignore it. Because as long as you feel like you are being fulfilled and you're progressing on whatever path God has placed before you, then you're doing it right, I think. I don't think there's no rule book for it, obviously. There's no set of instructions for how to go about one's spirituality and one's spiritual pursuits. And if pursuing a real spiritual career is definitely what you're meant to do, then it is what you will end up doing, just naturally. That is sort of what the Queen of Wands is all about. Queen of Wands is an interesting card as regards a sense of faithfulness, because it has been my experience with her that she just works. She just does what she does very naturally. She doesn't have to jump through any hoops to get what she wants. She just is, and things naturally are attracted to her. That's how powerful and strong she is as far as maintaining an energetic field. She just is very magnetic, and very little can actually ignore her presence and can really pull away from it. She really is very gravitational as far as the court cards come. And I think in this case, it's important to remember that a lot of the developments that happen spiritually will happen naturally, and to just be patient for them. So I hope this helps. I hope I haven't gotten too redundant here. But I believe that's about it. You do have the Princess of Cups. Oh, that's the one card I haven't talked about. My gosh, the Princess of Cups. I totally ignored the Princess of Cups. And she is sort of connected to the Queen of Cups, which is interesting. But I think the Queen of Cups in your environment, for the most part, is just saying that well, it's connected to that Six of Cups, too. It's, as we said in the previous reading, the Princess of Cups is all about pure happiness again, much like the Six of Cups. She's just personifying it. She's a very artistic youth. She's very helpful. She's known for helping people and being very humble and very kind, and very warm and very sweet and very loving, very generous. And she's also very intuitive, like her mother, the Queen. She's actually depicted in a sort of swoon of ecstasy there on that card, which is quite lovely. But I would say that first of all, there's so much water in your reading, which I think is interesting too. And again, there's this big concept of you triumphing over emotional obstacles here. That's just indicative throughout the reading. And converting whatever difficulties you've had emotionally in the past into joy and into happiness, and that's what this whole thing is about. And I think right now you're just in a really good place. I think that's all the Princess of Cups is saying, is that for the most part, you're very happy with the world around you right now. You want to help people, and you are in a place right now where you want to share your experiences with people and help others. And I think that could be a real source of happiness for you and a real source of pleasure for you. And I think that is eventual for you. This Princess of Cups energy is carrying over into your overall outcome in the form of the Six of Cups. Now, it doesn't say more specifically exactly what that pursuit is going to be, how exactly you're going to help people. Because, and the other worrying thing about it is that, again, it does have the potential to bother people with that Five of Wands. So I feel like this is something where you really just need to let more things happen, to just be more patient here and to see how this turns out. I think you need to reach this step first. And not necessarily push this in one way or another. I think experiment with being more open about it and see what comes your way and let that inspire you. But I think whatever you do, don't push anything onto anyone. I don't know if that's really something we want to strive for, is pushing any ideologies or anything onto anyone. I would avoid that. Just let this happen naturally. That's all the Queen of Wands is saying as far as where this is going. That a lot of this is going to just happen, and to just enjoy it. Really, I think for now, continue to focus on you, because you haven't perfected anything. It's a work in progress. Even though you've worked on it for a long time, it's still a work in progress, and it isn't finished. The great work is not usually finished this quickly for anyone. So you still have your own work to do, and I think it's still important for you to focus on that for now, and then maybe down the road think of, after you've gained some more experience, then think about pursuing something more spiritual as a real disciple. I don't know. But I don't think that it's saying right now is a great time for you to necessarily jump into anything too hastily. All right. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions, let me know. And I wish you the best of luck with all your pursuits. And I would like to thank you for your purchase of a reading from me. So take care of yourself and let me know what you think. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.